and talk to us in person there, that also works. So whatever is really best for you, but be as vocal as you want. We're here to talk about the city, and we need feedback from everyone. So first is going to be the Parks Plan update. If you've been following that over the past couple months, I'm going to hand it over to Carrie Reardon with the City of Elyria, and she's going to give us a quick update on where we are there.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and give a little bit of an update. So as some of you may or may not know, the City of Elyria Parks and Recreation is in the process of updating our master plan. So what we were able to do is just get some of the feedback that we have already received, and we'll go ahead and share some of it that has to do with trails, accessibility, things like that. So just let everybody know, this is kind of the process that we're going through. Right now, we are in the engage step. So we're getting feedback from the community and also starting to get feedback through some of the stakeholder groups. So far, surveys, we've gotten 800 completed surveys so far. 81% of those surveys are from people that live in Elyria, and this is just a little snapshot of the parks that they live by. So you can see the 4 kind of major parks that were pulled out of this info, and that's kind of where the surveys have come from. Again, this is just feedback. These are not recommendations that have been made at this point. So again, just feedback from the surveys that we've received. As you can see on here, the 4th highest is bike trails. So 45% of the people believe that these are upgrades that we should be making to existing parks. So that's a pretty high number. Also, people are looking to expand the trails. Trail lighting, came up at 27%. So just some of the things that also go hand in hand with this active transportation plan that we're also involved in. Some unmet facility needs that people talked about. As you can see, again, number 4 was trails for walking at 16%, and then down just a little from that, paved bike trails and also hiking trails along with mountain bike trails. So again, people are wanting trails, which is great because these are things that we're talking about within the active transportation plan. There's also something part of our master plan that is a mind mixer, so it's online engagement, and some of the information from that is if people were given a magic wand, what would they do with it? And obviously you can see the top one right there is access to parks from neighborhoods, and that is some of the information that we were talking about with the active transportation plan, so that goes really well with the direction that the city is trying to move in. Getting people to our parks is a very high priority for everybody. Again, trails and natural areas, some of the feedback, better and more, trash cans, paved paths connecting parks to neighborhoods. So again, you're seeing a very, very strong pattern here of getting people to our parks and how can we do that. The next steps for the master plan is, again, the stakeholder groups, which we are starting to do actually this week. So there are groups that throughout the city, Brandsetter Carroll, who's doing the master plan, will be meeting with to get their feedback. And then that will be put with, the surveys and the citizens' feedbacks to then go down to update the vision, mission, goals, and objectives. And then after that is where the recommendations will come. We just want to remind people that the information that I've presented today is just feedback. It is in no form of a recommendation. And that is ongoing also. You can always continue to participate in the Mind Mixer to give your feedback as far as the Parks and Rec Master Plan update. The process will also allow us to identify any capital costs involved, there will be a lot of that for all these different projects, develop action plans and draft a report, and then it will be presented to council. So that is a little bit of an update for our Parks and Rec Master Plan.
We have one question from Facebook Live, Carrie. Who received these surveys? So if you could just go over how they're distributed, or if you can still respond.
So the surveys were cut off at the end of November. So there was paper surveys that were handed out during the town hall. And then also there was a link to that survey that was on the, it was put out on the Parks and Rec Facebook page. It was on the City of Elyria website. So there were a few different avenues that the surveys were put out there for people to respond. But like I said, the Mind Mixer is a continuous online engagement that people still can be a part of. And they can go to the City of Elyria website and they'll be able to get that and still be able to provide feedback even if they weren't able to complete the survey.
Great, thank you. All right, so if there's no other questions from anyone, we do have about 30 people watching on Facebook Live. So if you're in the Zoom call, you're not alone. But we'll go ahead and—
I do have a question.
Yeah.
I do have a question. The survey, was the survey the active transportation survey? Or is that one and the same, or are these different surveys?
So there are two different— Oh, go ahead, Carrie. You got it.
I think I was just going to say the same thing that you were going to say. There were different surveys. So what I was speaking on just now is strictly just for the Parks and Rec Master Plan.
Okay. One other question. Define the word parks as you use it. Are these strictly city parks, or are they any park within the city? And I'm speaking of the Lorain County Metro Parks.
Right. So this master plan would just be for the City of Elyria parks.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
All right. So if there's no other questions, we're going to kind of switch gears and talk specifically active transportation, so biking and walking. For those on the Zoom call, if you want to enter in your information for us, that would be great for us to help track who's here. So if you go to www.menti.com and enter the code 8193384, you can tell us a little bit about who you are and who you represent. If you're on Facebook Live tuning in too, you can also pull up menti.com and give us the same information. But we just want to kind of get a sense of who's here, and if you want to skip any answers, that's okay too.
What was that again?
www.menti.com.
Okay. All right.
Use the code 8193384.
8193
384.
384. Okay, thank you.
Just a quick way for us to get a little bit more information about who's here today.
The information is also typed into the chat box if anyone wants to copy and paste from there. And we can leave that open, Sarah, if you want to move on to the project timeline, and anytime anyone can sign in and put in their information.
Awesome. So just at any time, if you go in and enter that, that'd be great. But talking about our project timeline. So for those of you who have been following us, you know that the city and Lorain County Public Health are working together to create this active transportation plan, which identifies safe walking and biking routes throughout the city. We've been working with our consultant tool design group, who is here on the call as well. So we kind of kicked off around the summer, spring, doing some of that initial information gathering. talking to the public. We hosted 2 meetings and we had a survey out earlier this year, and really trying to understand what are the existing conditions in the city, and what are some of the barriers to walking and biking, and what are some of the places that you really wish you could get to by foot or by bike. So after all that feedback collecting, we came up with some draft recommendations as a steering committee. So there's a group of about 20 of us that kind of tried to make some of these connections. And where we are today is sharing with you some of the connections that we think are physically possible in the city, and seeing if they make sense, if they help us get where we want to go, and really trying to land on some final recommendations that can be implemented over the next 3 to 5 years in the city, and really trying to bring in these opportunities. So we can go to the next slide.
Great.
And to take us off on the draft recommendations will be Katie Alone from Tool Design.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Alone. I'm with Tool, as Sarah mentioned, and I'm a project planner with Tool, and I've been working with Sarah, Lorain County Public Health, and the city of Elyria on this active transportation plan, along with my colleague Artie, who is also on the call and is helping take some detailed notes for us today. So as you all know, and Sarah just said, we're at the point where we did an existing conditions analysis, looked at what type of facilities are existing, how people are moving through the city right now by bike or walking. And then we took feedback from the public and created a draft network of infrastructure recommendations. So these infrastructure recommendations include several different types of facilities. So I just wanted to show some examples of what we're talking about. So when we're talking about bicycle infrastructure, there's several different types. First, there's neighborhood greenways, which are going to be your low speed, low volume streets that we're suggesting to mark with shared lane markings, wayfinding to help people route their trips, and then potentially traffic calming measures as well. But they're going to be your, like, again, your low speed, low volume streets. So they're pretty comfortable for most people to ride with vehicular traffic. Then moving up, you're going to have your separated bike lanes. So these are going to be on your faster roads, roads that you don't want to be riding with traffic, with vehicular traffic. And there's several different ways that bike lanes can be separated. So here you see flexible delineators, here you see some curbs. So there are low-cost ways to implement separated bike lanes on existing roadways. And then even further separated is shared use paths or your trails. So as Carrie mentioned earlier, in the parks plan, they're looking at access to parks and trails. That of course goes hand in hand in what we're talking about here with the active transportation plan. The shared use path or trails that we're talking about in our plan are mostly going to be your trails that are adjacent to roadways and have a small buffer in between vehicular traffic and bicyclists or pedestrians. And then when we're talking about pedestrian and intersection infrastructure, of course, pedestrian, we're talking about sidewalks. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And then intersections, enhancing crosswalks, having high visibility crosswalks, maybe curb extensions, or at non-signalized intersections where there's a high percentage of pedestrian traffic, adding rectangular rapid flashing beacons or RRFBs, and these flash when someone pushes the button to cross to make vehicles aware that there is going to be a pedestrian crossing through the crosswalk. So as I mentioned before, we took all of our public feedback, existing conditions analysis, looked at different types of facilities, and created a draft network. So a few things to point out about this network, and we're going to get more detailed into different areas in just a minute. So this is like a big picture view here. But a few overarching things, we really tried to make sure that we were making strong east-west connections. And you'll see several of these neighborhood greenways that we'll talk a little bit more about that are helping with these east-west connections. We also wanted to make sure that we are making strong connections to the North Coast Inland Trail, which runs through here. And so you'll see there's several trails or shared use paths that are connecting into that spine, that trail that is also US Bike Route 30. So today we're going to be focusing on the west side and the north side for recommendations. And anyone who's interested, and we'll say a reminder at the end too, tomorrow night we're going to be doing east side and downtown and south side. So like I said, for the west side, really making sure we're making some connections into the North Coast Inland Trail and some better connections into downtown. And then for the north side, making some of those east-west connections, and then connections up to the Lorain County Community College, and then the Midway Mall area. So I'm going to switch to our Google map. Just a second. And we'll dive in deeper into these recommendations. So just to go through the layers that are on this map, as I mentioned, this is US Bike Route 30 that's going through, and down here, this is part of the North Inland or North Coast Inland Trail. And then there are some existing bikeways, either shared use paths like the trail itself, or shared lane markings and shared roadways more in downtown. We are going to focus on the recommendations that we've made. And again, we're going to start with the west side, move to the north, and focus on those. And I'm going to go through the recommendations one by one, but we want this to be a conversation. We want to hear from you all. So if you have questions, comments, please just unmute yourself and chime in. Write questions in the chat box. Artie's going to help monitor that, or write questions in the Facebook Live chat box, and Sarah will relay those to us. So jumping in, oh, and I'll also mention, I can always switch to Street View if anyone's wondering exactly where the area is we're talking about, because I know maps sometimes can be a little abstract. So starting on West River Road, down by Infirmary Road here, this is West River Road. One of the things that we are recommending is to add a sidewalk along West River Road. And this is to fill a sidewalk gap that isn't there, to make a better connection into across the river to the library, to other amenities such as South Park, and then eventually down here to the stadium and some other Family Dollar, Aldi, other commercial entities. And then also to add a shared use path or trail along Infirmary Road to make a connection down to several services that are down here. So Lorain County Public Health, the Murray Ridge School, Lorain County Services and Support. There's several services down here that are not connected very well to the rest of Elyria. So adding a shared use path there. And again, when we're talking about a shared use path, we're talking about this side path that's running adjacent to the roadway, but would be a connection for both bicyclists and pedestrians. Any comments or questions on those, on kind of that area before I start moving further west?
Would there be a barrier between the side and
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think what you were asking is there going to be some type of buffer or
yes,
barrier for the, okay, great. So for the shared use path or side path trail, there would definitely be a barrier. So here you see a small tree lawn or grass between the roadway and the side path. So that if it's a trail, then yes, definitely. Sidewalks don't always have that. Preferably if there's enough room, yes, the sidewalk. But the side path, it's really critical since you have bicyclists on there too.
if it's a side path, if it's what you're calling a sidewalk, would it be on the same level, or would there be a curb between the sidewalk and the roadway?
So the sidewalk on, well, to answer your question, both of them would have a curb. So whether it's a side shared use path, side path, or a sidewalk, they would have a curb. Here you can't really see the curb, but there is a curb on that side after the grass. Both of those would have vertical separation from the roadway.
Okay. Okay.
Mark, I'm not sure if I think you froze. If you're trying to ask another question, maybe type it into the chat box and we'll make sure we answer it. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll move on. If you have any other questions, please unmute yourself or type into the chat box. So moving further west. So again, in this area where there's several services, Lorain County Public Health, there's already the existing North Coast Inland Trail that we've talked about. So one recommendation is to add a shared use path that would connect from these services directly into the existing trail. And then another connection into the trail, which I'm going to turn, the trail is this blue line right here, would be along West Ridge Road. And so adding a shared use path or side path along West Ridge Road would connect several residential areas to the North Coast Inland Trail, as well as this commercial area at Leo Bullock Parkway and West Ridge, where there's a few amenities. And then going further north, Lowell Street, also a proposed shared use path along here. And if you look at this kind of, again, as that complete network, we're seeing a loop around from Lowell that would connect, again, residents, some jobs over to West Ridge, down connecting residents again to the trail. So kind of a loop here that we're trying to form, or you could also combine it with what we're saying on Infirmary Road. So making a complete network on that, or trying to make a complete network for bicyclists and pedestrians on that west side. Any questions before I zoom in a little closer to downtown?
I think we'll just share, Katie, this is Sarah from Lorain County Public Health, that we have been talking to Church of the Open Door, and they're really interested in helping to make the connection. So we're also looking about the potential to take that path kind of behind the church, so bicyclists and pedestrians aren't having to go onto 113 and then hop right back off once they get to Lowell. So that little connection at West Ridge and 113th is one we're looking to make.
Yeah, so that would be over here is where Sarah just described. This is the open door Christian church, or Christian school and church. Great, thanks, Sarah. So moving a little bit closer to downtown, one of the things that we've talked about is the North Coast Inland Trail. Brought it up several times now. So making connections into the trail, we know, is an important thing that we heard in public meetings. And then also, as Carrie was saying before, something that the parks are considering too is how to make connections to parks and trails. So right now on Gateway Boulevard and Woodford, let me turn on the aerial here. There's a parking lot for the North Coast Inland Trail. One of the proposed connections is to create a side path or shared use path along Woodford Avenue, and then extend that. There's not currently a road here, so extending that as just a more traditional trail to connect into the North Coast Inland Trail. An alternative right now, how people are connecting is along 2nd and 3rd Streets, and coming to this intersection here and getting onto the trail via Leo Bullock Parkway. So right now, those are just striped kind of like shoulder bike lanes. And what we're suggesting is to formalize those and make them actually separated with flexible delineators so that they're more comfortable for people to be going to connecting to the trail. And then also enhancing the intersection here with potentially a pedestrian hybrid beacon or an RFB to notify vehicles when people, bicyclists and pedestrians would be crossing from 2nd Street to get onto the trail, since 2nd and 3rd right here are one-way streets. So those are kind of two parallel options. The ideal would be the Woodford Avenue, since that's separated from traffic and a connection directly into the trail. But I know this is, you have the parking lot there. This is an area that people are already using. Any comments, questions, thoughts on these recommendations here? Yeah, Marty.
I'm trying to figure out what's the name of that road, but when you're past Gateway Boulevard there's that first road where you park at. That road, I think, is Water Road.
Woodford, Woodford Road. So I will zoom in. Sorry, this. But
if you go further down there's a wide path. I think it's a water line, and they've leveled it off. The path could go over that water line. I think that's the water department stretched. For some reason, they leveled it off, and now it's all dirt. I don't know what's going on there.
Here is this maybe?
Yeah, in that area there, because it takes you right to the bike path. I don't know what the city's doing with it, but they finally leveled it off. It could be a way to get to the bike path instead of going over 2nd Street.
Mm-hmm. I think the idea would be extending. So right now, you can see Woodford Avenue kind of dead ends here. The idea would be to extend the path to actually connect up to the North Coast Inland Trail.
And that's what that path does right now. I'll call it a path, but it does connect to the trail right off of Woodford Road.
Oh, off of Woodford Road, all the way through. Okay, so yeah, it would be formalizing that then. Yep. I think we're talking about the same spot.
Yeah, I think we are too. I just wanted to make sure, because they plowed it, leveled it off, and I keep on hoping they pave it for us instead of going over 2nd and 3rd Street, because those roads aren't really that great right now until I've already gotten bad flats because I didn't see the stones.
Yeah,
Are the potholes.
definitely. Yeah, and I know that we've obviously Derek and Ren are on the call. We've been working with the city on these recommendations, and Woodford Avenue was an area that they're very interested in.
That's good. That's
Mhm.
good. I'm glad to hear it finally.
We have a few questions from the Facebooks, Katie. The first one is maintenance or keeping the roadways on Second and Third clean, as well as any additional parking for residents who don't reside in the area but want to start a bicycle journey kind of in this area.
Mhm. Those are both great questions. So the first one about maintenance, as part of the active transportation plan, we'll be making recommendations on strategies for maintenance of the bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So, and this is something that someone else had also brought up in a previous meeting, that Second and Third collect debris on them on the bridge. And so that's definitely something that we could add in that maintenance section. For regularly cleaning and maintaining those bike lanes. And then the second question, additional parking. So there have, I think additional parking is something that the city's interested in. And I think the exact location is kind of the question based on property. So it's definitely something that we want to incorporate into the plan. I don't know, Ren or Derek, if you want to say anything about exact location. I think that's something that we're still kind of exploring. I see Ren's shaking her head, yes. But yes, something that we should be considered. Thanks, Marty.
Yeah, I don't know if this was brought up in previous meetings, but I'll bring it up again because I hate to assume. When you're on 3rd Street heading towards Elyria, that traffic light there, right off the bridge. I don't know if
On 3rd.
yeah, I don't know if
This
it was
one.
ever brought up, but a bicycle doesn't trip the light, just like on Taylor Street on 57. But the good thing about 3rd Street, they got a button at least to hit. But
Mhm.
but a bicycle does not trip that light, and sometimes not. Sometimes I just go through it when there's no cars.
Yeah, no, that's so adding so there isn't a button to push for pedestrians or bicyclists.
Yeah, there is a button there, but if they don't know it's there, nobody will hit it. That's all I'm
Yep.
saying. It's kind of you gotta look for it.
Okay, so that's a good point. There are bicycle loop detectors. That's something that we could look into. I would say if the Woodford Avenue becomes the main connection, that there'll probably be more investment in making that the connection that most people are making. I think for 3rd, that's something that we can definitely add for to consider for intersection enhancements.
I prefer the Woodward approach instead of 3rd and 2nd. Anyways, that would be the safer approach, really. So I hope that's the way we go. Because
Yeah.
2nd and 3rd, you still gotta watch out for cars.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what we had been hearing too. But I think it's good to note that these two intersections need some enhancements to make that 3rd and 2nd connections.
Safe.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions on those before we start moving a little further north?
Oh, can I make one comment right now too?
Yeah.
Right now, for now, I've always liked Grafton Road, but the road's terrible, so I've tried different ways. So if you want to go on to Barnett Ridge Road, you're better off take West River because it's been totally paved. It's really nice road to go on if you want to go that way.
So West River is a better route.
Route to get to Barnett Ridge Road if that's where you want to go. Because sometimes we have to take a detour because they're working on 2nd and 3rd Street. So as of today, that's the recommended detour.
Okay, that's good to know. Great. So moving further staying kind of west, but a little bit further north. I'm going to zoom out real quick just so everyone knows. Again, we had already talked about that West Ridge shared use path, and then the Lowell shared use path and that connection through open doors. So zooming in to this area, we have the elementary school, the West recreational fields, and I think there's an actual recreation center there. And so we had suggested adding a neighborhood greenway on Foster Avenue to connect into to the rec fields here in school. And then also continuing that greenway on Furnace to take you down into downtown, to connect you to Cascade Park, and then up here to connect you into West River, the shared use path. And we'll talk a little bit more about that shared use path in a minute up to Midway Mall. And then another part that we've considered is adding a separated bike lane on Lake Avenue to take you into downtown. Again, make a connection to Lowell Avenue, make a neighborhood greenways connection here, and then also up here onto Furnace. So trying to connect again into parks, into school, rec fields, and then into downtown. Any questions or comments on those before we move up a little bit to the Midway or the West River connection to Midway Mall? Yeah, Marty.
Well, if you went a little bit further west, another alternative to go to the mall if they didn't want to go east is take Murray Ridge Road, and that eventually will take you to the mall. I can't remember what road that, Griswold Road. Yeah, it runs into Griswold. That's another alternative if they don't want to go east to get to the mall.
I see. So here's Murray Ridge Road. This would be, you're saying this might be an alternative route and then
Right,
go on Griswold Road.
It is a pretty route. That it's actually nicer and less traffic. It's a nicer route, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think so that could be something that we consider. I think here on West River Road up to the mall, it's a little bit more direct for people who are trying to get to maybe just a business or the mall itself.
Right. I'm just saying for a cruise ride, you're not in any hurry.
Yep. Yeah, which is a good point. Yep. So yeah, so zooming in and talking a little bit more about West River Road. One of the things that we know is that right now there's limited right of way, and there's a sidewalk on both sides that's kind of functioning as a shared use path. It's the route that is designated to get up further north to the Black River Reservation and other parks and trails further north. One thing that we want to explore is making that shared use path wider, or that what is now functioning like that, but is more like a sidewalk, wider to accommodate bicyclists. And then also improving the intersection near the library so that it's easy to cross to get to the library. And then adding some sidewalks up here on Midway Mall, and that's to close some sidewalk gaps that exist right now. But the idea would be making that a better connection up to, again, from downtown to Midway Mall, but then also up to the Black River Reservation in High Meadows Metro or Parks. And I think, I was going to turn on this layer. And there's that existing trail there that we're trying to connect into. So any questions or comments, or anyone who currently rides this and their thoughts about the current conditions of that area? Yeah, Marty.
Well, number one, when they cross 57, people need to understand they better go with the flow of the traffic. And when traffic goes towards the mall, that's when they should ride. But I don't know if this was brought up yet. You know, Cascade Bridge is open up now, so you can now go through Cascade to get onto West. But you got to go up a steep hill to get there. But
Okay.
That's another alternative.
That's good to know. And the bridge is,
It's a nice bridge. You got to see it.
yeah. Okay.
I got pictures of it.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could send them to Sarah or I.
All right, I'll send it to Sarah. I got her email, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
it. I'll send it to her. I'll send it.
Yeah,
right.
that'd be great.
All right.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I had an unstable connection there for a while, but I do ride West River, but I would refuse to ride the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
Same here.
That is, I hate to say this, but that sidewalk bike path is an abomination. It's not wide. It's not wide enough for traffic, for pedestrian traffic and bicycle traffic. There's no barrier between the road, and I just prefer to ride right on the road and mix with traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that needs to be that condition there just needs to be addressed. If Elyria and Lorain County is going to take this sort of thing seriously,
Mm-hmm.
because a sidewalk is not an acceptable bike path.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
to say it is being ridiculous. And I hate to be so blunt about it, but I know an awful lot of money was spent with that. And my other concern with that is that since the bike path exists there, I'm afraid that gives the message to drivers that the bicycle belongs up there on the sidewalk. And that is not consistent with the Ohio Revised Code, period.
Mm-hmm.
There's no mistake about that. And I need to make that statement strongly and clearly. And so that the governmental entities don't make that same mistake in the future of making sidewalks into bike paths and thinking the problem is solved, because it's not.
Yeah, and I think those are great comments, and I think that's exactly what we heard in the earlier public meetings with the on existing conditions, and that's why. Sorry if that was not clear. We are proposing to enhance that to a side path, shared use path that would be wider. And I know the city or the parks ran into right-of-way issues before, so that's something that definitely is a challenge that needs to be considered. But I think something that we want to make sure that we're talking about, because if it's something that's really desired by the community, it's something that has that public support that could move forward. And then another thing, we will be making some, general policy recommendations and general recommendations. So one of the things that can help educate drivers are signs like bikes can use the full lane or something like that, that could help with that messaging. Or another part that we haven't quite gotten into yet, we're really focusing on infrastructure today, is programmatic recommendations and educational campaigns about that help the community understand, what where bicyclists are permitted to be riding, because some people just don't know that they're allowed to use the full lane. So
well, and the intersection of West River and 57 is a great example.
mm-hmm.
I would not expect a 10 or 12-year-old who is riding their bike to mix with traffic going southbound on West River. The reason I would say that is because the southbound lane on West River, as it crosses the intersection of 57, actually is in the second to the right lane. There are 4 lanes of traffic there, 2 of them which turn east onto 57, 1 goes south, and 1 turns to the right. So if you're going through the intersection on the road, you have to be in the correct lane to be legal. And I would not expect an inexperienced cyclist to do that. So there needs to be accommodations made for various levels of cycling experience and capability to navigate that intersection. And that is only one of a dozen or so intersections that cross 57 throughout the city. And that's just a major problem that solutions are tough for, and I understand, but something can be done. That's all. I'm done. Thanks.
No, it's great.
Thanks,
I mean, we
Mark.
want to hear this.
I have a few other comments and questions from the Facebook
Great.
lives. So there's just a comment that says, recently in the news, it was announced that the Metro Parks had been donated the Cherry Ridge Golf Course. So there could be more desire to go along this path up north if, it's not going to be a golf course in the future and it becomes more of a park. So that was just a comment about maybe changing drivers of travel and such. But then the question that maybe Katie, you could help clarify, what are the general guidelines for establishing new paths and walkways? Is there a minimum distance used as a guideline for any new bikeways and bike paths? And really, for example, like, are all paths or greenways supposed to be at least a mile in length, or do they have to connect to an existing path, or do they have to create a minimum? So is there any guidance you can share on when we establish these, what the rules are?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to try and answer it. And if this is not what you're looking for, let me know. But when we started working on the bicycle and pedestrian network, again, we're looking at making a complete network. And and I'll zoom out here, some of these connections are really short. It's a sidewalk gap that's missing, but to a critical connection. So I wouldn't say that there's a minimum length that a shared use path or a neighborhood greenway needs to be. It's more about making those critical connections between residents and commercial centers, schools, those major destinations, parks, like we've talked about, and into downtown. When you're talking about the actual width, minimum width of sidewalks and trails, really looking at a minimum width of 5 feet for sidewalks and for paths with two-way traffic for bicyclists and pedestrians, really a minimum of 10 up to 14 would be great. That's going to give more room for side-by-side riding. And then always having those buffers where there aren't as many constraints between vehicular traffic and bicyclists or sidewalks or bicyclists and pedestrians. So I think that gets at the complete network that you're talking about. I wouldn't say that we go off of a greenway has to be a mile. It can be a quarter of a mile if it's connecting things that are important. Yeah, Marty.
I want to go back to Mark and give some examples of what he's saying. And as example, I went to Holland, Michigan, because one reason I went there is because they advertised 500 miles worth of bike paths. But when you get there, all they were is sidewalk sizes. And if you rode the sidewalks, when you got to the intersections, you had to watch out for gravel. I had dogs chasing me, and I got hit by sprinklers. So when you say bike paths, they should be a regulated width of, I think the minimum is 8 feet, whatever it is, and not just a sidewalk, because you can't pass each other on a sidewalk. It should never be designated as a bike path if it's a sidewalk, ever.
Yep, definitely. Bike trails or shared use paths, 8 feet and constrained it's going to be much more desirable to have that 12 to 14 feet. 10 feet is relatively typical.
Plus, if you have a
Great.
turn like that, that puts us at least 6 feet distance from each other. That's why I like the bike path. I know I'm more than 6 feet when I pass somebody, so I don't have to wear a mask.
No, it's something that's come up in other conversations too, is, you know, being able to physically distance is something that's really important and more important than ever now. So, well, I'm going to move on since we're getting closer to time, just a few of the other Northern recommendations so that we can get through all of them. But keep asking questions as they come up. So moving a little further east, I'm gonna turn off this layer. So one of the other connections that we're wanting to make is on Gulf Road. So right now, you know, it's just regular road, there's sidewalks, but expanding those a sidewalk, at least on one side, to be a shared use path to connect into eventually into the downtown area. Again, with the east-west connections, neighborhood greenway, we're looking at a connection here into the future, or it might be open now, the elementary school here. And then further down into this commercial area, there's several different businesses that would be connected and then moving a little bit further east and then up, this is Georgetown. As that slower street that would have signage, shared lane markings, potentially traffic calming measures to make it more comfortable for bicyclists to go further north, and then connect into Abbey Road, where we're proposing a shared use path, side path adjacent to the roadway. And that is to connect to Lorain County Community College, but then also this commercial area that is just north of the Elyria border. And right now, I'll zoom in. Right now, there is a side path that comes down to the college that ends. And so we would be connecting into that existing, I'll zoom in further. Right here, you can see it, existing side path, shared use path along there. And I think I missed one thing. We also are proposing a sidewalk along Rosalie Avenue to connect into this school for students who might be walking to school. So I will open, now that we kind of covered these pieces here, connecting up to, again, into Lorain County Community College, connecting residents, this commercial area and the school, and then down into downtown. Any questions, comments on those? Yeah, Mark.
I would, have you discussed the existing bike? I'm not sure what it is. It's a bike route from the downtown area up Abbey that ends up at Burr Oak Park, that actually goes through part of the village of Sheffield and Gulf Road from Hemlock north to Ford Road. Are you aware of that existing bike route within the city of Elyria? That's part of the city code. It was established in 1999, and it's my feeling is its function has been elapsed by other ways to get to Burr Oak Park, and that was the reason. It was a route from downtown to get to Burr Oak Park. And there is signage through neighborhoods going up Georgetown, going from through the college property, crossing at Antioch, winding its way over to Gulf Road, up Gulf Road, down Ford Road. And there's signage currently there, but a lot of the signs are gone. Have you considered recommending to City Council that they rescind that, they vote that out, whatever the proper procedure is? It is still on the books as a bike route.
Mhm.
But the signage is missing. A number of years ago, myself and another gentleman made an inventory of all the signs, and they were going to be replaced, but they never were. And a lot of the signs are eyesores anymore, and no one follows them.
Yeah, I think so I don't think we have that on the map. We have existing routes from the MPO, the NOACA provided. They have their network that includes city routes, and that includes bike lanes, marked routes, or trails. And so we have that data on here, of course, but I don't think, you said it goes up Gulf Road, like, so I'm just next to the east of the
It is extremely convoluted. I can't
Okay.
explain everything. It goes down. It goes down Washington Avenue up through what is Northwood School, the old Northwood School, which it may be a problem because that's going to become private property at some point, and then it goes down Poplar all the way over to Abbey. Cuts. It's extremely convoluted, and it goes on sidewalks. It goes.
Yeah, I would say if that's something that I think part of the reason we probably don't have it in here is it sounds like it's not well marked, so people are not using it. So no one like brought it up in the public meetings that we had before. So I think that's fine if that's something that we want to bring up with the city as saying this is not a good route. We're really focusing on, what are those good routes? And I would say as long as these routes that we've proposed are good alternatives to that, then and are still making some of the same connections, that's definitely the way that we want to move forward. But we could bring up, remind me, does that route have a name, a specific name?
I will send Sarah the link to the city codes where it's.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Yeah, and we can.
Okay.
We'll follow up with
Okay.
Derek and Ren on that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Marty. Yeah.
Back to Mark's comment. I sent Sarah a map of about 90% of the roads that I thought were the safest. And what Mark's bringing up, it should be on the map I send her if he's talking about the one from across from LC. It is a complex one, but as long as you have the signs, it's the better way to go on Gulf. I do not recommend Gulf at all for your average bicyclist. It's too dangerous. But to get to Burr Oaks, you take that wiggly route. But as long as there's signs there, it's easy to get through. And I miss the signs because sometimes I would drive from Abbey to Gulf, but without those signs, I wouldn't know how to get there. But that is the better route that you really should look into. And you got to make sure the signs are there to get through it, because it is a maze. But it starts at, what's that street across from LC? Whatever that street is, not Burr Oaks, it's right in the middle of LC, that street there.
Oh, here.
But I think
Burns.
I think that route was established before the connection from High Meadow to Burr Oak as part of the Lorain County Metro Parks.
Right,
I mean,
right.
It predates the access from High Meadow off of Ford Road to Burr Oak. So,
right. I mean, High Meadow's the better way to go.
That's a much better way to go. I mean.
Yeah, and I think that definitely for this plan, we're looking at all ages and abilities. So what are those facilities that, the 8-year-old feels comfortable on and the 80-year-old feels comfortable on? So we're definitely, I think, what you were just mentioning, Mark, is this connection here that now exists between the Black River High Meadows Park in Burr or Black River, Burr Oak. And then I guess the kind of the parallel route that we're looking at proposing is that shared use path on Abbey. But I would think someone who's trying to get to Burr Oak would be taking this trail here. Great. Any other questions or comments on these?
I applaud your inclusion of the recommendation to put signage in the city that says bicycles may use the full lane, because that is not a well understood concept by, I would say, the majority of car drivers. And if they don't know it, they need to be told that. Because it makes everybody safer.
Yeah, I think, and like I mentioned, one of our next big steps, and Sarah's going to talk a little bit about this later, is programmatic recommendations and those educational pieces and policies that can help educate, motorists, bicyclists, pedestrians, everyone on walking and biking and moving through the city. So I think that's definitely, I think that's a great thing that you brought up, and we can incorporate when we're looking at those programmatic recommendations.
There's a couple of questions and some discussion going on Facebook about the connectivity from Gulf to Abbey. Getting from Gulf to Abbey, that Gulf is a little bit windy and dangerous, and there's big hills. And is it possible to use Hilliard Road? But just talking about that connection there, Katie, or if there's not enough connections there, is there something possible?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So right now, part of the reason that we didn't make any recommendations further north on Gulf is because of, like you mentioned, topography changes and then it being windy. So really, the only place that a shared use path is proposed on Gulf is south of Hilliard into downtown. And then the idea, I think someone mentioned Hilliard as the connection over to Abbey. We recommended that a neighborhood greenway go on up here through the neighborhood more so, because those are slower roads, lower volumes. And it also connects then to the school as well that's going to be there. So making connections to those destinations and then coming out onto Hilliard Road. We could look to see if let me turn on the aerial. Since this is a desired connection, what we could look at is there room to expand the sidewalk on Hilliard Road to a shared use path instead, to make a more direct connection? And I think that's something that we could explore further to connect it over to Abbey. I just saw Ren just put in another, you're talking about further north on Burns. Let me go further north.
There would not be room on Burns Road. I can tell you that for a fact, between Abbey and Gulf. That is a terrible road, even for cars. The edge of the road is in terrible condition, and
You get that steep hill.
for a bicyclist, you just have to be in the middle of the lane. There's no question about it, and there's a steep down and uphill there, and that's been in bad condition for 35 years. That's just a fact.
So I think that it sounds like, and I want to make sure I'm reading this right. There's interest in the connection that we just went over, the Hilliard connection, it sounds like. And then there's also interest in a potential connection further north And I think what we would need to do, based on, Mark, what you were just saying, is look at an off-road connection there. It wouldn't, sounds like it could not be an on-street facility to make that east-west connection near Burns Road. We did not look, or we do not have a recommendation there, but we could look at a connection near Burns Road, or, you know, a parallel route. I'm seeing a few other roads that I'd have to look at closer, but Marty, or
That goes to what I was talking about before, and it's Antioch Drive. I looked it up. That would be the better way, but you need signs because it does take you zigzag through, and it does take you to golf. So that'd be another alternative. But you got to look at Antioch Drive and follow the. And it's on that map I sent Sarah. It should be. I drew that, but that would be another alternative. I agree. Burns is not the one. It's either Hilliard or Antioch are the only real two ways to get Abbey or golf.
yeah, so I think just to, if people can follow my cursor, Antioch is up here. So I think you're
Right.
saying like up here
then
and
it's
jog
zigzag.
down over
Yeah.
to golf.
Yeah.
I think we can look at both of those connections further. And if that does not answer, I know we're going to look at it further when we make revisions, but if that doesn't answer the question from the person on Facebook, feel free to follow up.
We have one more Facebook question, and I
Mhm.
know we're running up to the end of time. What is the connection at St. Jude's over 57 to the Georgetown area, which is near the ice rink? So we're talking about St. Jude's over 57 to the Georgetown area near the ice rink.
So I think, and Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, the ice rink's here that we're talking about, the North Park Ice Arena.
Yes.
Okay. So we actually, for bicyclists, the connection would into downtown would be using the neighborhood greenway over to Gulf Road and down. For pedestrians, there are sidewalks that exist, but in some previous conversations that we had, it was brought up that these intersections could use some improvements to help with that connection further south. And so we've suggested to check the signal phasing on the signalized intersections to prioritize pedestrians. People were saying that it was really long wait times to cross. And then that's at the 57 intersection. And then also adding pedestrian heads and high visibility crosswalks at some of the other critical connections as you're coming down. So this is Poplar and Abbey Road intersection. Is that answer the question? I think St. Jude is here. And so again, bicyclists, we were thinking the desired connection would be over onto Golf. And then pedestrians, I think you would be walking down Abbey Road and over. Now, we don't have Poplar Street as a neighborhood greenway. And so if that is an ideal candidate, we can look at that as being a candidate potentially if there could be a connection across for bicyclists. Marty.
Well, Poplar should be a greenway because Poplar takes you all the way to Washington Avenue, and that's actually the safer way to get to the park. Plus, if you go to Poplar down Abbey and cross over and you go to Duffy Street, I think it's called, that'll take you to Georgetown. That's the safer way instead of going down Golf to Hilliard. Because the problem with Hilliard is a good way, but it's too windy.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, the big problem in Abbey, the roads are bad. Until you correct that problem, it's not the way to go. But
yeah, I think that's a good point. We do have, I believe this is Washington here, that as a neighborhood greenway into downtown. So that would connect into there. Golf would be a shared use path, so off the street, so to make that safer. I think if we wanted to make the Abbey Road connection for bicyclists, we'd have to look at adding a shared use path, something separated from vehicles since Abbey's a fast road. as well.
So in the interest of the 3 minutes we have left, and for everyone who's on the call and on Facebook Live, do we want to wrap up and talk about how you can continue to give feedback if you didn't get your questions answered or something comes to mind after you've processed everything? Okay. So thank you everyone who tuned in on Facebook, who came to the Zoom, who commented, who gave us your brain for an hour and 15 minutes. We really appreciate it. This process is, we know, long, and we do a lot of talking, but I think it's going to really result in a great plan. So as we move forward, like we said, we have another meeting tomorrow night from 6 to 7:15 on Zoom, and we'll also be Facebook Live streaming it to talk more about the South Side and the East Side. So we're going to cover kind of the other half of the city. And after that meeting is done, both of these meetings will be posted onto the city's website, cityofelyria.org/transportation. So you can go back and watch them again. But we're also going to try and embed or at least link to the map, the Google map that we use today. So you can get in there and scroll around and read more and look at what's going on and really be able to interact in a more tangible way with the map, because I know it's always fun to do your own digging. So that's going to be coming up as soon as we're done with the meetings this week. And we're going to be looking at setting up some sort of form or a anonymous voicemail box where you can leave a comment, leave questions, give feedback in ways that are kind of easy, and also maybe don't take as much time and you can do on your own. The last thing we'll be doing in this entire process is really finalizing these recommendations so that the city and city council members feel comfortable adopting them, and kind of Lorain County Public Health, the city of Elyria, and all of our steering committee members will really own the plan and help to get things done. So one of the last steps before we come up with those final recommendations will also be prioritizing. Through this plan, we're going to have a lot of recommendations and a lot of ideas and a lot of things that need to get done, but we can't do them all at once. So we'll go through a process of making sure what's most important to everyone gets done first, and kind of how we get that done and how we fund these projects. So look for us tomorrow night if you want to come back and hang out for another hour. Also look on social media as we continue to push things out and to try and get feedback. And then after the holiday season, sometime in the early spring, we'll all come back for our third round of meetings and try to finalize this project and really get ourselves ready for the summer. So we're right on the dot, 2:15. Thank you so much to Ren Flanders at the City of Elyria for her tech wizardry in setting this all up. And thanks to Tool Design, Artie and Katie for hosting us. And we will talk to everyone, or maybe tomorrow, but also stay tuned and check out the website, cityofelyria.org/transportation. Thanks.
Is this boom link, is this always the same link for Zoom? Because I'm
It will be a different Zoom link tomorrow, but it's posted on the website. You can find it there.
So it's constantly changing the link, right?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to
So
make sure.
we gotta keep you on your toes, Marty.
Yeah. Because in another meeting I go to, they always use the same link, so that it's easier that way.
Yeah, all sorry, right. But you can find it all on the website.
That's all right, just as long as I know.
All right, thanks, Marty. All right, everyone, thank you so much, and we'll chat soon.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Katie.
Bye.